What's going on, everyone? My name is Christian Canizares. I'm one of the master techs here at Opus IVS. I'm joined with my co-host Brandon Matthews. This is going to be a PowerPoint presentation on the four-cylinder fundamentals for Hyundai and Kia motors. If at any moment you guys have questions regarding the products or any of the services that we offer, please feel free to reach out. Also, on some of the slides, there's going to be a couple of QR codes and a couple of QR codes at the end of the presentation that you can scan at any point that'll give you guys better information regarding who we are and what we have to offer. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be covering three engine groups from pretty much the 2011 era to the 2023 era. The Gamma motor, which is the 1.6 liter, the new motor, which is offered in a 1.8 and also a 2 liter. Lastly, we'll wrap it up with the Theta 2. This engine was offered in a 2 liter and a 2.4. Some of the things that we're going to be going into is going to be covering the timing systems, like how to set the timing and some common failures that I've seen in the field, TSBs and technical campaigns, and some special service tools and equipment. The 1.6 motor that's offered for Hyundai and Kia, this is like a pretty compromised chart of, for the most part, everything that it came in. It was offered in the Hyundai Accent with the RB chassis code anywhere from 2012 to 2017. The Hyundai Tucson with the TL chassis code from 2016 to 2018. The Hyundai Sonata with the LFA chassis code from 2015 to 2019, the Hyundai Veloster with the FS chassis code from 2012 to 2018, the Hyundai Kona with the OS chassis code from 2018 to 2022, the Hyundai Elantra with the AD or the ADA chassis code 2017 to 2020, the Kia Rio offered this motor with the UB chassis code from 2012 or from 2012 to 2018. The Kia Soul with the PS chassis code from 2014 to 2019. The Kia Forte with a YD or YDM chassis code from 2014 to 2018. And the Kia Optima with a JFA chassis code from 2016 to 2020. So yeah, as I mentioned at the beginning, that QR code that is there down at the bottom, if you scan that, that will take you to a direct link that will offer basically more in-depth information for our scan tools, the new Drive Pro 2, and the services that we offer. So some pretty key features on the 1.6 Gamma. This engine was only offered with direct injection high pressure fuel system. It does have both hydraulic intake and hydraulic exhaust camshaft timing. The oil pump for this motor is a part of the front timing cover. And this motor was also offered in a turbo version and both a non-turbo version. The design of the engine is both aluminum block and aluminum head, and the lash adjusters, it can either be mechanical lash adjusters where it's like a shim and bucket design that that was like a very common thing with Hondas, that you would check them with like a feeler gauge and kind of change the bucket to quiet up like valve train chatter, things like that. And then later versions of this motor were offered with like a hydraulic lifter design, which is a lot more common in what things that we see in today's day and age. Setting timing on the 1.6, this is a pretty easy motor to work on. I have some close-ups here for where your timing marks are. Most of the replacement chains on these do have pre-coded, color-coded links. And on the crank and on the camshaft, you'll have indentations where those links are supposed to line up. And those links only line up strictly for installation. So generally what I tell guys that are doing timing work on this is once you set everything at TDC, you want to go ahead and spin this motor twice and make sure that your timing marks and everything line back up. Your colored links will not line back up after you spin this motor over twice. They will eventually line back up, but the number of revolutions that will take, it's probably pretty high, and I genuinely don't think I've ever checked that. Um, but a pretty easy way to know if you're getting everything with the timing set is to note the orientation of your camshaft lobes. Um, on most Hyundai motors, when you're set at top dead center, your cam lobes should be pointing towards one another, or at least for the most part in like they were going to index towards an X pattern. Um, the timing marks for your cam gears is physically on the gear where you can see where these two yellow marks with on this slide here, they'll be pointing towards one another. And before you pull your timing cover off, you do need to set your crankshaft at top dead center for this. On your harmonic balancer, you have like a slash cutout that's outlined here with one of these red arrows, and physically on the balance or on the cover itself, you have another marking with 10 degrees before top dead center, and then physical 0 for top dead center. So before pulling off this timing cover, it is imperative that you set everything at top dead center on the bottom end side, and then your verification that you are at true top dead center before removing anything on this chain is to note the location of the two dashes on the cam gears. Your install marks for the chain are going to be these colored links here up top, and then your singular colored link down at the bottom. So that would be basically where you set the chain, and before you glue your cover and everything back on this motor, the oil pump, since it is a part of the front cover housing, it is driven by a cog. A lot of times that when you pull this timing cover off, that cog will spin. And there is no timing mark for the oil pump on this because it's just got two flat spots that will slide over the crankshaft. So what I try to tell people is dry fit your timing cover way first and dry fit it, make sure everything lines up. And you can also verify your top dead center by going ahead and mocking up your crank pulley on the timing cover as well, because your crank pulley is splined with a woodruff key under the crankshaft, so it only goes in one way. So it's pretty forgiving. It's like I said, this is pretty one of the most easiest motors to work on. Very, very user friendly, especially if you're somebody that has never really done timing work before. But for the most part, like I mentioned, this motor was offered in a couple different variations with like the hydraulic lash adjusters and the cylinder head and the mechanical lash adjusters, and again, both turbo and non-turbo. But that's pretty much sums it up for this 1.6. On the new engine, the 1.8 and 2 liter, this was offered in both Hyundai and Kia motors as well. The Hyundai Elantra Coupe with a JK chassis code offered this from 2013 to 2015. The Hyundai Elantra GT with a GD chassis code offered this motor from 2013 to 2017. The Hyundai Elantra GT again with a PD chassis code offered this motor from 2018 to 2021. The Hyundai Elantra with an AD/ADA chassis code offered this motor from 2017 to 2020, and the Hyundai Kona with a OS chassis code with from 2018 to 2021. On the Kia side of things, the Kia Forte with a YD/YDM from 2014 to 2018, the Kia Forte with a BDM chassis code from 2019 to 2024. So pretty much up until last year, they were running this motor. The Kia Soul with a PD chassis code from 2018 to 2021. And then lastly, a Kia Soul again with a SK3 chassis code from the 2019 to 2025 model year. Again, this is a very similar design to the 1.6 Gamma that we were just discussing. This is a single chain motor. Another pretty easy motor to work on. Some key features on this is that this motor was offered in both a GDI version and an MPI version. So on this previous slide here, this picture that I have is a 1.8 with a multi-port injection on it. You could tell by the exposed fuel rail. On the GDI versions, it is a different intake, and the injectors are mounted underneath the intake, so they're not serviceable at all without removing the intake. This motor overseas was optioned with a turbo in the U.S. And for North America, for the North American market, it was only offered non-turbo. Again, same design with the Gamma, where the oil pump is mounted on the front cover. So when you're taking this timing cover off, be sure to dry fit your cover and make sure that your cog for your oil pump is indexed correctly, because if you don't, you're going to have a rough time, especially if you're trying to do this in the car with fighting RTB and trying to have, somebody swing the cover down at the bottom while you're making sure that you don't smear the silicone on the timing components and all that. This engine was only offered with hydraulic lifters. The early versions of this motor had hydraulic intake timing and hydraulic exhaust timing. Later versions of this motor did have hydraulic intake timing and a electronic intermediate CVVT lock actuator, and this sole purpose of this lock actuator was to unlock the CVVT faster, essentially. It still adjusts it hydraulically. It unlocks the phaser mechanically, electrically. That was implemented somewhere around the 2017, 2018 year. Very similar design everything for the timing is still the same. The only difference is that you have this electrical solenoid with a pigtail on the front of the timing cover on the intake gear. That's the only difference. Same thing with this. This is an aluminum block with an aluminum head design. But again, this is going to be a very, very similar setup to the 1.6 Gamma. Again, another fairly friendly motor to work on. So same thing here. We have colored links for the install. And again, these colored links are strictly just for the install of the chain. So once you set everything over and you spin this motor over twice, do not be alarmed that the colored links do not line back up on your crank or on your cam gears. These are some pictures I incorporated from more close-up of just things I've done because in the service information, it is a black and white drawn photo, so sometimes the markings are not that clear, and it can kind of, if you're working on a car that's got some pretty sludged up stuff, some of those markings can be kind of tough to see. But again, it's going to be the same thing. Your markings for top dead center are going to be here on the inside with these two smaller arrows you have on your intake cam and your exhaust cam. Those two markings should be lined up with one another. And when your timing cover is fitted on this, you have access to viewing this. So again, same thing with the 1.6. When you set it at top dead center on the crank, you look up with your mark on the harmonic balancer with the timing cover, and then you can pull your valve cover, and this will give you your verification that you are in true TBC. We're going to move on to the Theta motors. The Hyundai 2-liter, Hyundai and Kia Theta motors were offered in both, again, Hyundais and Kias. In the Hyundai Sonata on the YFA chassis from 2011 to 2015. The Sonata with the LFA chassis code from the 2015 to 2019. The Hyundai Santa Fe with a DMA chassis code 2013 to 2018. The Hyundai Tucson with a LM chassis code from 2010 to 2015. The Hyundai Tucson with a TL chassis code 2016 to 2021. The Kia Optima with the TF/QF chassis code the from 2011 to 2015. One thing to note on this, when I'm saying the TF and QF, that the difference there is whether it was a Korean built vehicle or an American built vehicle. Hyundai will do the same thing too, where you have like an AD or an ADA chassis code. And generally, if the VIN starts with a K, that does indicate that the vehicle was a Korean built vehicle. If the VIN number starts with a 5, or a numerical start for the VIN number, that does indicate that the VIN is a U.S. production build car. The Kia Optima with the JFA offered this same Theta motor from 2016 to 2020. The Sorento with a UMA from 2016 to 2020. The XM Sorento from 2012 to 2015. And the SL Sorento from 2011 to 2016. And the QL Sorento from 2017 to 2022. Let's see. On the Theta 2, this was only offered again in just direct high pressure fuel injection. It does have hydraulic intake and exhaust timing on, for the most part, all of the early versions. The 2015 model year of this shifted over to an electronically controlled intake cam, which we'll go over a little bit in how it operates. The oil pump on this is a chain-driven oil pump, so it is a balance shaft module. This motor was offered in both a turboed version and a non-turboed version. Same thing too with aluminum block and aluminum head design, and this does use mechanical lash adjusters. So if you are trying to combat some valve train noise, and you look up in the service information, there is a valve lash specification that you do need some feeler gauges, but you can order different shims to basically pull the cams out and put a thicker shim in there to help soften up some of the valve train chatter that some of these will develop once the mileage gets higher on them. So the photo I have here for the timing, your timing marks on both the hydraulic controlled timing and the electronically controlled timing versions of this motor are going to be the same. Same thing with the timing marks for your balance shaft module. But since we've already been talking about hydraulically controlled intake cam timing, I figured I'd just show what the electronically controlled cam timing on this looks like. So same thing here. You have your marking here for TDC on the cover, so always set that up first before popping your cover off. And again, your colored links are strictly for install purposes only. You do have to clock this balance shaft module if you are pulling this chain off and reinstalling this chain. If the balance shaft module on this is not timed correctly, you can get increased engine vibration. It is not going to cause a dip in oil pressure or anything like that, but it can definitely create some weird vibrations that some people do correlate to, like worn motor mounts, things like that, especially if that thing is 180 off. Your install marks for your top dead center marks, again, here on the inside, your cams will be pointed towards one another. And then your chain mark here is going to be this orange mark. And your camshaft chain actually will go on the outside of this. Your balance shaft module chain will be on the inside for this. You have a tensioner for the balance shaft module, and again, your tensioner for your timing chain would go there. This is your electric CVVT. We'll kind of go in a little bit more here about how this operates, but it's essentially a motor that has a power that's duty cycled to advance and retract the timing on this thing. And you have this center brown seal on here, which I'll show you in a couple slides, that these seals will fail, and they are pretty prone to filling this whole housing here with oil and creating a series of fault codes. But for the most part, this is the 101 on the Hyundai and Kia motors, ranging anywhere from, like I said, 2011 to like 2023 model years stuff. The timing on these is pretty friendly. It's not anything that's too insane to work on with not a lot of knowledge or not a lot of tools. So some of the common campaigns and TSBs we're going to go about or go over is on the Theta 2, this was the engine. So on this chassis motor, it started with the YFA Sonata, but on this, this is the motor that basically created the long list of endless renditions of recalls and TSBs for warranty extensions and putting motors in these things. So this is just a couple of different things I wanted to point out. There is a difference between a campaign and a TSB. A campaign is essentially a recall. Campaigns are covered by the manufacturer of the automaker, and they are free to the consumer. So if you get one of these cars in that has a P1326 or is knocking pretty bad, or if you're unlucky enough to get one that's locked up completely, my recommendation before spending too much time on this is contact your local dealer, give them the VIN number, and ask them if there's any open campaigns on this VIN number. If there is, and ask them if it's anything specific to the engine recall. We were doing these motors on these cars with 300,000 miles, and even then Hyundai was still offering some type of partial assistance, just because this has turned into like a class action lawsuit. But if you see a P1326 and anything that comes with a Theta 2, definitely suggest contacting your local dealer first and have them run a VIN check on this car and see if there's any open campaigns. The 1326 software will throw or will set in various other cars too. So the recall, if you can see here, it was for several with the 2 liters, some of these with the 1.6s here for the Kia Souls. It's also covered for recall, and different variations for the 2 liters and the 1.6s and the 2.4s. So again, if you see that, first thing to do is definitely contact your dealer first and have them run the VIN number. For the most part, what we're recommending at this time for your diagnostic flow process for what you see in this is, number one, make sure that there's no open campaigns on this. Number two, make sure that the software in the engine control module is up to date. The software for the engine control module has had several different renditions of updates for this. So all it's doing is opening up the diagnostic strategy for what it takes to set this code, because it will set this 1326 code, which is a knock sensor fault, and the knock sensor is the microphone for your engine, essentially. So it's dialed in to pick up a specific frequency that will put the car in a low power mode to basically say, hey, we're having a not good noise happen. Please address. TSBs are something that are going to be customer pay per se. Not all TSBs, unless it is covered or outlined in the TSB, which I'll show you in the next slide. Unless it's outlined that it's covered by the manufacturer, most TSBs are going to be at the expense of the customer. So this is a example of a pretty common TSB that we see a lot. Hyundais and Kias do consume quite a bit of oil. It is the allotted amount of oil is a lot. What we have been told is 1 quart per 1,000 miles is considered normal. That is a great deal of oil consumption. So, I mean, if you're doing a 5,000 mile oil change interval, yeah, I mean, you're definitely adding oil to this car before it's due for its next service. This TSB, if you see here, no, that would be the next one for the warranty extension. So this TSB is basically your diagnostic flowchart for how to go about checking for excessive oil consumption. There are a couple things that you can do if you are suspicious of having excessive oil consumption. Definitely check compression. Low compression would lead me to want to do a leak down test on this. Your leak down test, should you want a good motor, is less than 10% leak down. And if you don't have a compression tester or a leak down tester, if you have a bore scope, that's also a pretty good thing you can do. Sometimes you'll get like cylinder wall scoring and whatnot, and that causes the piston to kind of jatter around in the combustion chamber, which is obviously going to increase the amount of oil we burn in the combustion chamber. But there are 2 TSBs that talk about a combustion chamber cleaning to help free up the oil sealing ring on this for most Hyundai and Kia motors. This is the TSB number for the Kias, and then this is the TSB number for the Hyundais. Essentially, what you're going to do is pull the plugs out of this motor. They have a chemical that they tell you to use that is like a combustion chamber cleaner. Another chemical that you can use is like GM top end cleaner. That's available pretty much over the counter anywhere. Let that stuff soak in the cylinder. So put a couple of ounces with like a syringe. Let that stuff soak in the combustion chamber overnight. You can come back the following morning, and if you have like a Mighty Vac or some type of an extraction pump, you can pull that stuff out. Probably a safe bet to maybe spin it over briefly with the plugs out of it. Put some shop rags down so you don't soak the under hood pad or anything. And then a fresh set of plugs and a fresh oil change do help buy time for these rings that tend to get carboned up and on the piston, which increases the amount of oil these engines burn. But yeah, that's the pretty common TSB for oil consumption on Hyundais and Kias. This is a overview of the warranty extension that is a TSB. So again, TSBs are paid by the customer, the consumer of the vehicle, not the manufacturer. But if you have a vehicle that, for example, and this is an LFA Sonata from the 2015 to 2019 model year code that throws a P1233. And then sometimes you'll also get a intermittent loss of power or a low power mode. And generally, most people also will complain or note that when they recycle the key, start the car back up, everything is fine. What they found was an issue with the in-pump fuel filter assembly on this, having a O-ring that will, or having an internal leakage, which causes a dip in the low side pressure, which is obviously going to be how we determine how much high side pressure we have. And on a gasoline direct injection motor, you need to have sufficient low side pressure to have sufficient high side pressure. But Hyundai and Kia have both extended the life of this part in both of these TSBs for 15 years or 150,000 miles. This is a very common thing we see. We do get quite a bit of guys calling in for this, so I would be mindful to note this TSB because it can help you in the future. So, like I mentioned on these Theta 2s, these things are pretty common to have a very multitude of failures. The brushes or the teeth for the motor will actually chew into the physical motor itself. or the ECVVT motor itself will chew into the ECVVT gear or the actuator, and you'll get a series of cam correlation codes for the intake, which will set usually a P0010 or a P0011. The other thing that's pretty common with them is this center seal here. This seal will leak and it will fill this whole chamber with oil. And oil and electric parts that obviously doesn't mix. So it will create interference when this engine is trying to adjust the timing, thus setting that. The seal for this is serviceable. You can get the seal separately. If you put a seal in this and you continue to get timing codes, it may have possibly damaged the actuator. And this is an example of a completely failed actuator where the tech pulled off the cover, and the cover was filled with sawdust essentially, or just millings from the teeth that have been worn almost completely flat on this side. So yes, this car did definitely result in a complete timing job and the whole 9 yards to repair this properly. Hyundai and Kia does sell a repair kit for this center seal. There is a special service tool to install this seal, but you can install this seal very carefully with a small socket or a small flat punch. And then your replacement kit will also come with a new cover, new exterior cover, and a new seal. And I believe you can also replace this ECVVT motor separately as well. It does not come with the kit, but this is essentially pretty common on the Theta 2s. We do see this a lot. So when you see this code, this would be the first thing I would be going to look for on a Theta 2 engine. On the hydraulically controlled cam engines, this particular situation on this car with a sheared cam pin, alignment pin, is very, very common on a 1.8 and the 2-liter with the or the new motor. But I have seen this on pretty much every single Hyundai that has hydraulically controlled timing. So this is not something that is exclusive to the new engine code or the new engine design. This is something that now I'm seeing very frequently on the V6s, on the V8s, on the 1.6s, on pretty much anything that has, like I said, any kind of hydraulic cam timing. There is a locator pin, so these cam gears on most of all Hyundais are fixed. They have a center bolt that is torqued to spec, and once that bolt is torqued, that cam gear moves unless the phaser or the phaser is being actuated to advance or retract the timing. That phaser does not move separately from the camshaft. So if you're spinning that camshaft, that phaser should be moving. If you see what's very, very common, it's more common on the exhaust cams. That's why I would set a P0017. When you see that, this is a pretty easy thing to go about diagnosing. You can set the engine at top dead center, look at your mark on the lower cover, pop the camshaft off. I typically tell guys to hold with a wrench, there is a slot that I believe it's like a 27 or a 29 millimeter that allow you to hold the exhaust cam, and you can try to turn the camshaft. If that camshaft turns, you're in trouble. You have a sheared off cam. I've seen guys have to try to drill or extract out this pin from the cam gear or from the camshaft itself. Sometimes this does result in having to replace a camshaft because if this has wallowed out as such, it's probably done the same on this end. And the amount of camshaft deviation that's acceptable on most Hyundai and Kia motors is 5 degrees before it will set a fault code. So if you're asking for 28 degrees of timing at idle, you'll have a data PID for specified cam timing, and you'll have another data PID for actual cam timing. If your specified is requesting 28 degrees, the cam timing on the actual side must be 5 degrees plus or minus from that 28 number. Outside of that, you will get fault codes. Sometimes you can also see this failure if it's bad enough on a scan tool. Typically, how I tend to catch it is you'll have to pull up your 4 PIDs for intake. specified in actual and your exhaust specified in actual. Road test the car, put the throttle or put the car under load. You can have somebody sit in the passenger seat, or you can just set your tool to record, and you can see that when you're coming off of throttle and the cam is pulling back the timing, or the actuator is pulling back the timing, you have a very large deviation. Most times this will also come with a stalling concern. So if the exhaust timing on this does go too far, it will stall a car. So this is, again, something very, very common on pretty much anything that's hydraulically cam controlled. So this is something I for sure would be looking out for. If you're going to diagnose anything, any Hyundai and Kia that has any timing codes, on our hydraulic controlled timing, we have oil control valves that their sole purpose is to just redirect the flow into the cam phaser or out of the cam phaser to advance or retract that timing. This is very, very imperative that you guys pull these oil control valves. And the first thing to look for is, do we have any kind of sludge, any kind of metal debris, any kind of any obstruction in there that can be contributing to this potentially setting cam timing faults. If your valve cover looks like that in that photo, you imagine what the inside of that cam phaser looks like. So that car got a whole package, cam phasers, chain, everything. But that is just sheer negligence on lack of maintenance. And when this oil breaks down, it will plug up the oil screens in the oil control valve as outlined here. But if you pull an oil control valve and you find excessive amounts of metal, especially if it is metallic metal, you may have a larger problem with this engine. This engine may not be to the point where it is knocking yet or locked up yet, but be very, very cautious. And I stress this, but this right here, this would deem me it's getting a motor, especially if you have metallic bearing material in there, because that motor is starting to slowly break down, and the oil control valves and the oil filter are generally the first two places on a Hyundai motor with hydraulic cam timing where this stuff will get caught up at, and it obviously will set a series of timing codes. So be sure this is something to look for. Very, very common. Take a look at this stuff before you guys sell timing repairs on these cars. This is a pretty generic list of special service tools, but they're very, very important tools for these cars. This OTC chain wrench, if you have ever had one of these that's locked up, these things are pretty much a nightmare to freeze. This OTC chain wrench, it's offered in various lengths. I think it goes all the way up to like 48 inches in length, but you can get this on Amazon. But if you put that on the crankshaft, you can almost it's like the jaws of life. It's gonna spin the motor. Same thing too with our compression tester and a leak down tester. This is an example here of like a compression and leak down tester offered by Snap-on. When you're checking your compression and your leak down on these motors, you want to make sure that you have no more of a 10% difference between cylinders. If you have low compression, we definitely are going to be doing a leak down test. When you're running your leak down test on these motors, you need to have everything set, or that particular cylinder needs to be set at top dead center, so both your intake and your exhaust valve are closed. And when you adjust your shop pressure or your test pressure, you want to have it set to 100 psi, so you can see a full sweep of your percentage on leak down. The couple other important things that are very keen on working on these cars, especially if you're trying to chase like an oil consumption issue, is this is a exact borescope that I own. It is from a company called Teslong. You can get it on Amazon. It's like $129. But the really cool thing is it has this thimble on the side that adjusts the camera view to let it swivel up and down, so you can get a full panorama view of the combustion chamber on this thing and be able to identify if you have cylinder wall scoring, burnt valves. Say you have a broken valve and you have excessive leak down from this valve, you can put this thing in there and adjust the thimble so you can see a up footage of it and be able to see, hey, wow, this is why this thing has quite the misfire. Mechanic stethoscope, again, something else you can get at Harbor Freight. Pretty inexpensive, and a digital torque wrench. Various manufacturers are out there. I know Gear Wrench makes one now too. But these are all really, really crucial tools to diagnosing and repairing Hyundai and Kia four-cylinder motors. And for the most part, that concludes this PowerPoint. Again, this is if you have any questions regarding what our products we offer, the services we offer, you can scan this QR code. We are going to open up here to take some questions if there are any. But yeah, thank you guys very much.